And there are other aspects of that as well. For me, I stopped voting because it went against my philosophy. I guess it would be a non-aggression principle, really, because going to the booth to vote for a person to be, to rule over another group of people, whether they wanted them or not, and also what purpose that office serves, it's mostly to infringe upon the rights of the individual. So that's where I have an issue in that way.
Yeah.
And whether...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, kind of where I stand on it now, or where I'm leaning toward, is that voting on issues like if medical marijuana or legalization or something like that was on the ballot, I would go vote for that.
Okay.
Or something similar nature, some kind of issue. But really going out and choosing who the next guy that's going to screw us over just doesn't seem... It almost seems immoral to a point, because like you said, it's a you're voting to decide who is going to have control over your life. And why would you want somebody else
over other people's lives? I'm sorry to talk over you.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I mean, because you can choose leaders for yourself, that's no problem. But when you impose those leaders on others, that is a violation of the non-aggression principle.
Very good point. Yeah, and
right, and on taxes and bonds and things like that. Well, like for if you're voting for a person to put somebody in office, you don't have the option to not vote for them. The only thing you can do is either vote for A, B, or C, or not vote. But you can't go in and say, I don't want them, or I don't want that. So if they don't get it, if they have more votes against them, that seat is basically remains empty. That seat's not filled. But on issues and questions with taxes and bonds, you actually do have the option to vote against that. So if you're going in to vote for more liberty for something and for individuals, I mean that's really your there's really no other way to do that unless you go and appeal to legislators or the oppressors that people have already put there in office. So I don't have such a problem with that. And if a state question came up for cannabis, I hope that people do go and vote for that, because there are too many people just being harmed by the law. But yeah, then I was looking too at the whole ballot access, or not just the ballot access, but when the petition initiatives. So you have all these people working so hard to do it should be the right thing anyway. They're fighting so hard for individual stems as far as the cannabis issue goes. But then you have people fighting really hard to get storm shelters for schools. So that gets on the state question, of course. And I think another big problem is people go to the voting booth and don't really research any of these, and so you get the little blurb that says, "Oh, this is going to be great for the kids," or great for the schools, or whatever positive thing it has. Yes, or they vote straight party without really even looking into any of it. And so with storm shelters, of course, I mean that would be great, but to have it passed, of course, you're saying that it's okay to rob your neighbor more money to pay for this thing.
Yeah. Well, you brought up an interesting thing when you mentioned ballot access, just because it sparked something, another thought I had about voting, and that's specifically related to here in Oklahoma, we don't really have much of a choice as to who to vote for. When was the last time we had? Actually, I talked about this last week? When was the last time we had more than two choices on the presidential elections?
Right.
Last I can remember is 2000. So 14 years ago we had three choices, but we basically have no choices in who we want to represent us, even if we wanted somebody to represent us. We've got people can run as independents, but those people are more or less left out of the picture when it comes to media, press, debates. So it almost stands to reason, why would you vote when you don't have a choice?
Well, people think you gotta vote. You gotta vote. It's your patriotic duty to vote. You'll hear people say, well, they don't talk about politics all year, and then they go vote and they get their sticker and they post a picture of it on Facebook and they're all proud for exercising their patriotic privilege. They say it's a privilege, and they say that they've made their voice heard. And no, they didn't. They went into a private booth where no one could see them, and they quietly marked a ballot that had, a couple of pre-selected options for them. How is that making your voice heard? And if people want to make their voice heard, really, they need to be speaking up all through the year, not just when they go and do the state ritual of voting. And I'm talking about voting for a person. I agree with you on I always vote against bonds, like tax increases and things.
Agreed.
But making your voice heard, that is, if you want to make that's like throwing a pebble in the ocean.
That's an interesting thought about these people that are so proud of the fact that they voted, and yet how many of those people pick up the phone and call their legislator, or write a simple email to their legislator, or go down to the state capitol and visit their legislator,
or write a blog and try to persuade public opinion their way, because public opinion is usually the thing that drives the legislators anyway.
So if voting is their patriotic duty, wouldn't it seems, if they want to say that voting is their patriotic duty, wouldn't it be more their patriotic duty to actually be informed about what's going on?
I think that they probably think they are, and I'm picking on myself because I used to be way less informed, but feel a lot more informed. And that was back whenever I watched, one news channel and listened to talk radio, and so I felt very informed, but I really wasn't. And so I don't think those people feel like they're not. They probably feel very informed.
You're probably right. They probably think they know a thing or two about politics and what's going on in their state, local area, country, for that matter.
About really voting, though. When you go to vote, and you go and you stand in line, and you're not, if there's a line, a lot of times there's not a line, and you have to stand there. You can't talk about anything of relevance. You can talk about the weather, but you can't talk about anything that's on the ballot. You cannot wear a T-shirt that for a candidate, or whatever. No electioneering. I'm just kind of harping on the using your voice thing, making your voice heard. That just is almost sick to me to think of people just standing there compliantly, not speaking to people who are standing a foot away and sharing their views because it's against the rules, and then they're going to go quietly and choose some of the pre-selected options there. That just seems so not free.
Yeah, it's like, most elections, it seems like the results are, well, let's just say they're rigged. The results are already predetermined, it seems.
Well, I mean, the candidate's different.
Yeah.
The options on the ballot. If I'm going to go vote for someone to represent me, they're probably not going to. The person I would like to represent me probably isn't going to be on that ballot.
Probably not,
because I'm not on the ballot.
And I mean, we could do a whole other show on this. But this whole idea that these private, let's call them for what they are, these private corporations, non-profit corporations, though, are they're having us, the taxpayers, fit the bill to decide who's going to be their candidate.
You're talking about the Democrats and Republicans?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean we could do a whole other show just on that. But
well, I thought it interesting too because I had seen this on social media and I hear it from other people. The people who didn't get out and vote were being condemned for not getting out and voting, and I think in this last election there was about 60% of registered voters did not vote, and so they're being condemned for not going out and voting and being called lazy and apathetic. Yeah. And I find it interesting that they couldn't even entertain the idea that perhaps there was nobody on there that they felt represented them or would be a good candidate for that office, and almost all the taxes and bonds always get voted for anyway because they sound so great and everybody wants what's great for the children or whatever. But unfortunately, that is that's they can't vote like they're. It would be going against their conscience if they went to that voting booth and voted. So it really isn't a voice, especially for those people. Right. And so a lot of those people have to find other ways to sort of make their voice heard. But to say that, and I think it's just, the voting is so glorified. Yeah. And so if you don't vote, then you're lazy and apathetic. Right. Yeah, well, some people believe
I went and voted in this last election solely because there was a libertarian candidate on the ballot for governor, although he had to run as an independent. That was pretty much the only reason that I voted. Because I wanted to vote for a libertarian.
I think this the voting system benefits the state. Lisa was talking about how you'd be made to feel apathetic if you're not taking part in this ritual. Yeah. And because think about it, if you're the state, how do you want people to make their voice heard? Anonymously, quietly, choose between these options. You don't want people out there actually making their voice heard. So this whole system really benefits the state.
Well, what you're really saying is that the state wants to give people the semblance that their voice is being heard, when it's actually not.
Exactly. That, and then also partisan types will make the argument that if you don't vote, then that's like voting for the other candidate.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've only heard it from Republicans because I am actually a Republican, but I'm sure Democrats do it too. You didn't vote, well that's like a vote for the other guy.
Yeah, or the same thing if you're voting for an independent or a third party. You're voting just to give the election to whichever other party loses. But it kind of brings up a question that I had for both of you. A lot of people will say that if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. But I don't know if you've heard it or not, but there's a comedy skit that was done several years ago by George Carlin where he poses the exact opposite. If you do vote, you have no right to complain. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, we all have a right to complain no matter if we vote or don't vote, but I agree with his idea there.
I should have.
I didn't.
Yeah, I did that sound clip. That'd have been great.
One thing I would like. This is my dream world. This is what I would like to see. If there is an office in an election, and neither candidate receives like a majority of the votes, like I'm saying that people didn't show up to vote or voted none of the above or no. that office wouldn't get filled. And whatever